Remember that roundtable presentation I've been talking to you guys about? Well, here it is. Unfortunately, though, the sound file that I thought I would get didn't get recorded. So we managed to pull some sound out of an iPad video. But you know, iPad video microphone, big room. Sorry folks, this is not the greatest audio that we've had on Qiological, and I really apologize about that. And in the future, hopefully we will not have these kind of snafus with the recording equipment. But it's the best I can do. So give it a listen, and I hope you find it helpful. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. All the sponsors here provide helpful products or services that you'll find beneficial in your clinical work. Want to get better at treating concussions and other neurological conditions? Clayton Shoe has some innovative methods. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. Later in the show, Jane offers you helpful suggestions on how to raise your rates, and Golden Flower Chinese Herbs shares a journey of healing that I think you'll recognize. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more. Ever found yourself listening to a Qiological conversation and thinking, wow, I needed to hear that? Yeah, me too. And I never know when I'm going to hear a guest say something that stops my world and reboots it with a larger perspective. If these conversations have ever helped you to feel more grounded, more inspired, or just less alone in this strange and wonderful work we do, consider becoming a member or supporting the podcast with a bit of tithing to the donation jar. It helps keep the lights on here at the Qiological Sound and Motion Lab so that we can bring you these conversations every Tuesday morning. You'll find all the details at qiological.com. Thanks for listening and for being a part of this.
Hey there, I'm Cameron Jafari, an acupuncturist from Los Angeles. So I started learning nanopuncture from Dr. Clayton Shoe because I was facing these complex neurological conditions like stroke and MS in my clinic, and I just felt like I lacked a solid process to treat them. Brain-related issues always felt like a whole different animal, and I was looking for a clinical system that worked and could guide me through them. So after attending my first nanopuncture seminar, I was able to apply the process pretty quickly and with pretty amazing results. I remember the first stroke patient I saw afterwards was a guy who had a stroke 2 years back, and he couldn't talk at all. And after a few treatments, he started saying a few words. And a few treatments after that, he could actually have conversations. It was pretty incredible. So this is why I feel like nanopuncture is the future of acupuncture neurology. And you can be a part of that. Their next seminar is on treating concussions and is being co-taught by both Dr. Shoe and Dr. Ayla Wolf in New York City on April 26th and 27th. To learn more, visit nanopunctureseminars.com.
Today we got just an hour here for a fantastic question and answer opportunity with our panel. I'm Michael Max. I'm the host of Qiological Podcast. I've had a chance to meet some of you, and hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to some others before this is all over. And delighted to be here to take flavor of the podcast out to our larger community. Really delighted to have four luminaries here with us today. We've first of all got the godfather of sports acupuncture, Whitfield Reeves. Hillary Patzer. She was a member of the U.S. ski team for 3 years. Acupuncture saved her bacon after she overtrained. Athletes overtraining, imagining that. So she's here with us. She's also the acupuncturist for the Minnesota Vikings and some other pro athletes as well. So really looking forward to having you. Matt Callison, you know this cat. I don't think you need an introduction at this point. The famous Mr. Chad Bong, he runs this little thing called the Acupuncture Sports Alliance. Sports Acupuncture Alliance. With all your team. What an amazing event. So we've got some questions on Facebook. We're going to run through a few of these, and then we can take some questions from the audience as well. So, oh, wait, one last thing. That's right. If all of you on our panel, we can start with the Godfather over here.
Didn't the Godfather die of
That was the Godfather of the Mafia. You're the Godfather of sports acupuncture. It's a whole different story.
We're Mafia.
So if each of you could just take a moment and tell us what sports world you found your way into, what aspects of the sports world you found yourself into and treating, and just the elevator version of how you got yourself there, or what happened, what were the circumstances?
overwhelmingly aerobic distance endurance athletes is how I got my start. Runners, distance runners, marathoners, triathletes, cyclists. I'm not sure what elevators are, so I don't know how to answer that question, but the synopsis of what I would say is that the way to transition yourself into the athletic world, or specifically the professional athletic world, is to do really good treatments, period.
So yeah, I'm an endurance athlete, U.S. cross country ski team. I don't look much like an alpine skier. And as was said, I overtrained. And so I started to work on athletes. I've also done the Boston Marathon and the Kona Ironman. So definitely have done a lot of endurance stuff. So it's sort of odd that I'm with, an NFL team, NHL guys, baseball. But I think one of the major things for me is my background. It really gives the guys confidence that I understand what they're going through and what their body feels like, and wanting to stay on the field, so to speak. And just like Whit said, you have to be really good at what you do, and a little bit of luck of being at the right place at the right time, to meet the people that could, help project and catapult your career.
Background with athletic training and physical education was a start, and then as far as the acupuncture piece, is always been interested in musculoskeletal treatment. And then just like what Whit said and Larry said, is that you've got, once you treat one professional athlete and they love what you do, and they're going to tell all of their partners, and then pretty soon you have a whole practice of all of these professional athletes, because what they're getting is so different from what they're getting in their own training room. And from my experience, because I used to treat the Minnesota Vikings, I flew out there for 3 years in a row. The players are the ones that brought me in. The training staff wanted nothing to do with me, even though I tried to contact them. This was a while ago, so the training staff might have changed. But it was the players. It was the players that really responded. They put me into a hotel room, a big, huge suite, and the doors would open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. They would just come in. And it was something that I wanted to be able to speak with the trainers about what my findings was and what I was doing. They really, at that time, didn't really want much to do with me, but the players really enjoyed it. So the same thing can happen in your own private practice. Just treat the players, do a great job, and they're going to tell their friends.
Yeah, so I think all the stories have the same base to them as work hard, prep, so that when this opportunity arises, you take advantage of it. So I also think that making connections with other acupuncturists is helpful to do this, because one of my big breaks into the athletic world, which is, let's say, Olympic level track athletes is the big thing that I'm treating currently at the highest, the highest level athletes, and some NFL guys. One of them, the track athletes, came from this track athlete called just like the first acupuncturist that comes up on Google. If you Google Philadelphia and acupuncture, called that person. That person was like, asked them what was going on, and she told him what was going on, and he said, "Oh, you should go see Chad." So, because I had a connection with this other acupuncturist, is how I got into this Olympic athlete world. So get out there in your community and talk to people and make connections. Refer patients to other acupuncturists. I refer internal medicine stuff to other acupuncturists all the time. So, but that helped me build this network of people that allowed that connection to happen. Since I send people to them, they were willing to send people back to me. And then once I got that athlete, I treated that athlete, and same story. Like the athlete loved what happened, and then a bunch of that athlete's friends. And actually, the next thing was the athlete's coach. I treated the athlete's coach, and then it exploded from there. And now the ball is really rolling. So I think the story is similar for all of us. And same with Kai yesterday, and everybody I've ever interviewed on my podcast.
So that word of mouth and getting a reputation within the community really seems to be a big thing.
Yeah, connections I think are important. Probably all of us had somebody who connected us with somebody, and that's how it exploded. So
we're going to get into these Facebook questions in a moment, but I just want to follow up with something that you guys have been saying. In treating the players, was the players that really started talking among the other players. Now, I think we know as acupuncturists, our practices grow by word of mouth all the time, right? And whether it's people bringing family members or friends or whatever. I'm wondering if in your guys' experience that there's like more of a buzz that happens within a sports team than within like a family or a friend network or non-professionals. Is there something different about the way professionals communicate with each other that make this a particularly important aspect of building practice?
There's a big camaraderie in the sports team. It's a team. And when one person sees that they just found something that's the cutting edge, they want everybody on that team to be able to go and see this person because they want to win. And so when you can get into that energy, and it's the camaraderie. That's the big thing. I think it's different than the family network because most families are dysfunctional. Sorry, I know this is funny. With sports teams, though, I mean, these people are brothers or sisters, and they're really trying to invest to go win for a common purpose.
For me as well with the Vikings is, families don't spend a lot of time together usually, but they spend a lot of time in their locker room. And so when I first started with them, I'm like, at training camp, asking where they heard about me, wondering if they had been, referred to by the trainer or not. And they said, "Oh yeah, the guys in the locker room are talking about you." So they just overhear it, or they'll say, "Oh my God, I got a hammy thing." And they're like, "Oh, you should go see blah, blah, blah." So I think like Matt said, there's just a lot more communication. They're not as dysfunctional. They want to win really badly, but they also are in a room together a lot of the day. And that would be bad for a lot of families. So yeah, kind of just that bond that they have is very different.
you get one person, and then now everybody involved with these track athletes they don't go anywhere else. They're just like on the first pathway they go through because one person, So they're very tight bonded group, and that's what teams are about. So.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that I use to keep my practice running smoothly. So, let's talk about something that can be a little bit uncomfortable, raising your fees. I know, this is something that might feel awkward, but it doesn't have to. With a bit of planning and care, you can handle it in a way that feels right for you and your patients. One tip, give yourself at least 2 months to prepare. This gives you time to get comfortable with the change and let your patients know what's happening. You can share the news through emails, booking reminders, or even just a friendly little sign in your clinic, and avoid over-apologizing. Instead, keep it straightforward and matter of fact. Keeping things consistent across the ways that you communicate can really help avoid confusion. Fee increases aren't always easy, but you're not on your own here. For more tips and ideas on how to communicate these changes with confidence, check out frontdesk.chain.app and look for the article, How to Tell Your Clients You're Raising Your Fees. Oh, and one last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, use the code CHEOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account.
My experience is almost the opposite, and such is my life often. I started with runners and triathletes, and these were individual competitive athletes who often were competing against themselves, for a personal best, or occasionally you'd be fortunate enough to get someone who could win a race, an entire race. But if they found something that worked, they did not often want their training partners to get this information because they would no longer have this edge. So it wasn't always the camaraderie thing was not, in my experience, in the early years anyway, when I started. Later, as triathletes were teams and running teams were happening rather than just individuals running, then that camaraderie thing started to happen. But I think that the most important thing that underlies it all is communication, is sort of what everyone is saying. People are talking. But you have to know the language. So that if a runner comes in and says that they ran negative splits on this marathon, and they notice that their resting pulse rate has been several beats higher, or some other jargon around how their training is going, you need to know that. You need to know what that means. And if you don't know what that means, you go home that night and you read until you know what that means, because these athletes are not going to refer patients to you if you don't know negative splits or increased resting heart rate or whatever the parameter that they are talking about. So you've got to know what their life is like. So that, I think, is very important. And in an interview, when you can say, well, so what is your resting pulse rate? And when you're doing a normal training run, how close to maximal heart rate, or 80% of maximal heart rate is your run, And when you can speak with some sort of clarity like that, they know you understand who they are and what they're doing. And so if it's within the context of training, that language is important. If it's in the context of anatomy, I think it's really important to kind of go, oh, this is where it hurts, huh? And really get that sure point and have them kind of go, oh, yeah, nobody has ever found this point quite like this. You really know where the problem is. And you follow that up with a picture, with an illustration of the anatomy, and say, this is the problem, and this is how we fix it, so that now you're communicating anatomically about the treatment rather than within the context of a lifestyle training. But that knowledge base, that language is essential. You can't go in there with demons and wind and heat and cold and energy reversing, going up and down and out or something. It's not going to work, in terms of bringing about any sense of confidence for most athletes.
Yeah, it's interesting how a team sport versus an individual sport will take a really, really different approach. Got to know your sport, got to know the language. I'm going to take a question from Facebook here. When getting started, do you recommend focusing on increasing athletic performance or preparation, or recovery, as a practitioner who's developing their practice with athletes?
The way I look at it mostly is keeping them on the practice field or keeping them on the track or whatever. So the little bits you can get thinking about performance, like some sort, is great, but the amount you can get from the training throughout the year is the most valuable piece of it. If they can never miss a workout because you did your job and kept them out there. That's the greatest thing that you can do for them, I think, is to keep them out there training. So that's my focus, is keeping them on, out there practicing. Is way more to me. The other stuff, those two, the performance and the recovery, to get out there and back there quicker maybe, but I'm talking about keeping them out of injuries is the most important thing to me.
It's kind of wearing two different hats in my mind, and I totally agree with what Chad's talking about is consistency. When somebody's coming in with aches and pains because they're training so much, to make sure that the muscles are pulling evenly, the chi and blood is moving through the area, they're posturally correct, so they are able to train as consistently as possible. And rehabbing that person to keep them on the field or whatever the sport they are, that's one hat. Now, as they're actually progressing and they're becoming more pain-free, then you can start dabbling into more sports performance and human performance in my mind. Because the treatment for a human performance or sports performance is actually a lot less, the way I do it, than it is in rehabbing an injury. Because you're doing a sports performance protocol the way that I do with acupuncture and moxibustion pre-event. And it only takes, the way that I do it, only 10 minutes to do it. Right? And that's, you're not addressing an injury. So it's like two different hats, really. You're going for rehab and balancing versus enhancement of chi and blood moving through the body perfectly for that particular event.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would also depend on where your heart is. Like, this is coming from a practitioner asking, where they should focus their practice to potentially draw athletes in. As an athlete myself, and I don't know if you're asking recovery from an injury or just your one day off. But with the US ski team and stuff, like, we would be training 2 to 3 times a day. Our day off was gold. And almost more important than any of the intervals that we did was that rebuilding your system. So in that way, recovery is really important so that you can get back out there and train, a zillion times again before you get another day off. The performance aspect is maybe going to be more important and more exciting to certain practitioners and to certain athletes. So people are going to find you for what they want. Pre-game, I sometimes don't see anybody, but I see them on Tuesday. And I see them Tuesday religiously, that's their recovery day. But I would never see them on Friday or Friday before a game. So they kind of find you as well, and I sort of let that flow. Kind of let the chi flow and let them figure it out a little bit. So I guess I'm a little wishy-washy on that one, but it kind of depends on what you attract and then what they're looking for.
I agree with most of what's being said, but I'll comment on this tomorrow afternoon, I think, is when I'm supposed to speak on the subject.
Sure. Thoughts on this.
But by and large, of all the studies on athletic performance, the two legal things that seem to stand out are that proper training enhances athletic performance, and coffee enhances athletic performance. And everything else is a hit and a miss, and so.
Let's take another one here from Facebook, and then we'll get into the audience here. The advantages and disadvantages of treating athletes at their training facilities and/or events, as opposed to getting them to come to your clinic, like your other patients do.
Whatever is appropriate. I don't have anything intelligent to say on this subject.
For me, it's really different being at the Vikings facility versus actually I'm joining a collaboration of practitioners with Twin Cities Orthopedics in about a week and a half. So I'll be across the practice field from them, which will be really nice. They can, walk or ride their bike or golf cart or whatever. So it's going to be a different answer. But at my studio, at my private practice, I still treat them very differently than I would treat some other people that come in. I spend more time with them, do a lot more manual with them just because of their hitting a brick wall, for a living. So wrong, right, or otherwise, maybe I should be treating every patient with that much detail, but I am able to give them more body sugar, at my private practice than I am on the 45 minutes at the facility.
I only from my own experience in that, and it's probably, there's different situations that can occur, but when treating in a facility, sometimes you're going to be watched by other people of exactly what you're doing. Mock combustion is usually not allowed. Like you were saying, you're going to have limited time per patient. It's often in a training room and not in a single room. So it's not always, but you're going to be amongst a lot of people watching what you're doing. You may not actually be able to do the assessment that you want to do because somebody else is doing that assessment, like the team physical therapist or the team athletic trainer. So you're a little bit handicapped in what you can do because you're the acupuncturist and all you're supposed to do is put needles in people and nothing else. Whereas in your clinic, behind closed doors, you're doing everything that you want to be doing.
Yeah, track athletes don't really have facilities. But yeah, the NFL guys I've all treated have all come to me, so I don't really have anything to add.
We have a question from the audience. Let me come to you so you can speak into the mic.
In many parts of practice, we see the average migraine come in or a period problem or a sprained knee. Working with professional athletes, I'm sure you see that, but even more with somebody who's been trained in extreme, both physically and mentally. And I wonder if that drives you deeper and harder to understand Chinese medicine. And what was your biggest aha? This is something interesting about Chinese medicine that I never would have learned unless I had to work with these kinds of professionals.
I would say the most important aha for me is that if you look at the cause of disease as endogenous, the emotions, exogenous, the wind, heat, cold, damp, or other causes of disease include blood stagnation, phlegm, trauma, et cetera, et cetera. The viewpoint is that this is other cause of disease. Trying to figure out the relationship with their mother or trying to look at some organ dysfunction is just not really nearly as expeditious, expedient as understanding that they're pushing themselves and that's a cause of disease. That is overtraining, lifestyle, however you'll want to look at this. I'm going to talk about this some tomorrow again. But it's really allowing yourself to go into this other causes of disease and find a way to work with that, thereby abandoning so many of the other things that we seem to think are important, Zang Fu, Jing Lo, the emotions, and kind of go, this is not the way to get there, And that was hard for me because I really thought this medicine was really, you would have a Zang Fu dysfunction and a Jing Lo dysfunction, an emotional piece that all fit together and it would correspond exactly to the injury, and it didn't work out that way. And so the aha was to let go of this stuff and look at trauma, for instance, and overtraining as the cause of disease. And it kind of frees you up to just approach it in a really simple, relatively unintelligent sort of way, not very pristine at all, but it works.
I was trying to quickly come up with something in my head. Being the athlete and then overtraining, training for the Olympics, and basically having my heart ripped out and having to figure out who I was without being Hillary the skier. I luckily found acupuncture, but that's a little bit of my aha as well as just that experience that I had. When I graduated from my master's, I thought facial acupuncture sounded really great and, some nice massage and stuff. I wanted nothing to do with athletes because I had been so, beaten up and slowly started to get back into it through different continuing educations, different modalities, going to all the PT conferences in Minnesota and all of that. So I had little aha moments of going, oh wait, no, this is me. I really tried to ignore it. This is me. I came back home. I'm really glad though, for TMI, I did step away because when I came back, it was real. And it wasn't just something that I did because it was easy. It was something I did because it's like what I'm supposed to do.
the treatments are easier. The chi and blood is so clean with professional athletes. They're driven, their shin is usually very straight, they have a focus. They're being treated by numerous people. And because their chi is so clean, less needles, less effort, their diet is usually really good. So there's less things to be able to focus on compared to the average Joe. So actually, in my mind, it's easier.
Matt took my answer.
Shit.
I mean, I feel like sometimes when these people come in and their bodies are so amazing, it's like I could think about doing acupuncture on them and they would be perfectly fine the next day out on the track run. I mean, it's amazing sometimes the things they hobble in with and are racing the next weekend. It's amazing sometimes. Just how? One of the things that's forced me to do is to be really good at translating the concepts of acupuncture into the Western medical, or in just regular language even, to explain it to people who are not necessarily even Western medically trained, just people who are, they're athletes, they understand their muscles, but athletes don't always know much about the training they're doing. They show up and their coach says, run, and they're like, okay. And then they're done and they go home and eat and sleep and recover and go back again. So you got to be able to explain stuff to them in a way that they can understand it. And I think that's been a super valuable tool to me.
Would any of you like to comment about or critique Chan Gunn's book? I can't remember if it's called Myofascial something, but anybody?
Chan Gunn was influential in my development, and I think he's influential in where acupuncture has gone. He's not an advocate of traditional Chinese medicine, let's put it that way. But his concepts of looking at motor point tenderness as a diagnostic factor for spondylosis is monumental. So Chan Gunn was definitely a big figure in the evolution, I would say, of sports acupuncture. He did good work. Gotta give him that.
Imagine this. A patient walks into your clinic. They're carrying more than the pain in their body. There's a story there. A history woven with the stress of long days, the ache of things unsaid, and the quiet longing for something to shift. You listen, not just with your ears, but with your hands, your intuition, your heart. It's not just about needles or a formula. It's about connection. Understanding the threads that tie us together, mind, body, and spirit. That is where Golden Flower Chinese Herbs comes in. Rooted in tradition and crafted with care, their formulas are more than herbs. They're a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern practice. Every bottle, a quiet partner in your work, helping you to meet your patients where they are. Because healing isn't just about treating symptoms. It's about creating trust, cultivating belonging, and helping someone feel truly seen. Golden Flower Chinese Herbs, your partner in practice and connection, where tradition meets care.
I would agree very much, and he set the tone along with Janet Travell of anatomical thinking and an anatomical basis for acupuncture, even though he, as Matt said, wasn't necessarily an advocate of Zhang Fu Jing Lo, very influential. But you can tell how important and brilliant he was because his students are just really, so many of his students in Canada are just very, very precise and very, very fine. And so he's left a lineage, and, I don't know all of it. I don't know all of them personally well, but great respect for Chan.
How to work with local and professional teams?
Persistence. Find somebody, contact them, and then contact them, and then find somebody else and contact them, whatever, Start off with, maybe a little smaller, team, again, I'm not going to go home and just call the Eagles. I would maybe start off with the Arena League football team, the Soul, instead, something like that. Harder to crack into the top than it is to work your way up a little bit, I think.
Personal views in the current and future state of sports acupuncture.
How much time do we have?
I think Matt wants to go.
No, but there's so much to that. Godfather, come on.
He dies a terrible death. The story ends. No. We are, as a community, creating sports acupuncture, as we move through every day. In this moment, in this weekend, we just keep adding to it. We continue to have lectures and articles, and people have aha moments in a clinic and write about it or communicate about it. We're adding, it's a growing, it's an alive, it's a lineage-based medicine, and so the knowledge base just keeps being added to, and I don't know where it's going. I don't care where it's going. It is going, and it is being influenced by the trigger point people who, dry needling people, Qigong students, by traditional acupuncturists, by athletes. It just keeps getting added to, and it will continue to evolve, and it will need at some point differentiation between sports acupuncture and anatomical acupuncture and orthopedic acupuncture. They all have different aspects to it. And I think the most important piece with sports acupuncture is kind of what I commented on before, the importance of the practitioner really understanding the psyche of the athlete. Actually, like in Steve's original question about this athlete that is being driven to training for some reason, the sports acupuncture, as we develop all these treatments, must and will include understanding the psyche of the athlete, or translating the emotional states, the Shin, the disturbances of Shin and the other emotions, and how that translates to the competitive athlete. And we're still growing that, but that would be the piece of sports acupuncture differentiated from anatomical or orthopedic acupuncture. Slightly different.
It's a really exciting time, I think. Athletes are being healthier, like Matt said. They're eating better. Concussion is a really big deal. So they're really paying a lot more attention, as are the trainers, as are the coaches, as is anybody who is putting their money down on these guys. So they want to pay for the best of the best to keep these $1 million bodies performing well, and then later not having quite the same side effects that they did back in the day, where they didn't have to wear helmets and stuff like that. So I think if we can come together as a community, we were talking about it at lunch, we're just so separate, and really come together at things like this and communicate and educate and get excited, and then go out and drag more people into it, and get this massive amoeba going, because the athletes want it, the coaches want it, the trainers want it, and we can provide it. The athletes love the more shiny stuff. You didn't think they would, and then they're like, oh, I love that. And you can bring little bits of that in. So we have that ability to be different than the dry needling and the PTs and the trainers and stuff, and really make that arena ours and own it. But we need to do it because the time is right now, I think, where they're really open to these kind of modalities.
This is really kind of a Pandora's box with this one. Sports acupuncture, I don't think there's a definition. I think it's left up to interpretation, because there are so many different people that practice sports acupuncture. It could be Japanese acupuncture, it could be phylo-elemental acupuncture, but they specialize in sports. Is there one way of doing it? Heck no. There's no way there's one way of doing it. But the common ground is that the more popular that acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, in my mind, because my roots are in TCM, love it, want to continue to practice it, is the more popular that TCM acupuncture becomes, and the more popular that sports acupuncture is going to become. But also as well as gynecology. In the field of gynecology, TCM is skyrocketing. So there's different fields because acupuncture and the efficacy of acupuncture and TCM is really now, in the last decade, being recognized.
Yeah, I think it's a super exciting time. I mean, that's why we're all here. I think it's an exciting time. I think we're going in a great direction. But really, this is my question to you guys. Where do you want to see this go, and how can we facilitate that as the Sports Acupuncture Alliance? We got 4 of us got together and we're like, hey, let's start something. And we started with this conference, but we want to see this grow from here into something where we really bring everybody together and we're able to, go in some kind of direction that, a lot of people want to see us go and build something and create a great community. And we're not quite sure how we want to do that. We want some feedback from you guys. So from my standpoint, this is more of a question for you guys than it is for us.
I'm both a chiropractor and an acupuncturist, and I remember watching Joe Montana get adjusted just before the Super Bowl. Is anybody old enough to remember that? Okay. And that was monumental for the chiropractic profession. That working with athletes got chiropractors into everybody's lexicon. So now everybody has a chiropractor. It's exciting to see that, and it would be really exciting to see in the acupuncture profession if you could take that, don't make some of the same mistakes that chiros did, and I can give you a list, and bring acupuncture into the mainstream and let everybody have an acupuncturist. Okay, and then you have the specialties and the facial acupuncture, the gynecology, the sports acupuncture, and the high-profile athletes are a great venue, a great vehicle for the profession. And so whether you want to treat your runners or your athletes or the Vikings or if you just want to tap in and be able to ride the wave, however we can support this, we support the profession as a whole, I believe.
I mean, that's happening with athletes. I mean, James Harrison and Kobe Bryant and Serena Williams. I just watched a documentary on Serena Williams. Got acupuncture in the documentary. It's happening. The athletes are starting to show that they're doing this stuff, and I think it's going to be great for us.
So like Matt, my background is athletic training, and I've spent hundreds of hours in the training room, and I've always wanted, if I had more time, to be able to volunteer or work in an athletic training setting. So it's not my ideal setting, but I think it's so important that we infiltrate training rooms to start becoming part of the traditional athletic training program in colleges, high schools.
There needs to be a lot of open minds in order to be able to have that come in, and it's happening. It's happening. I mean, think about what was happening 15 years ago. There wasn't that much. Yeah, even 10 years ago, but exponentially every year there's just more and more acupuncturists in hospitals and training rooms. It's becoming more accepted. Another 10 years from now, it's just going to be amazing.
I mean, places like Southwest Acupuncture College works with University of Colorado. If I ever find some time, I'm going to try to create a clinic for the Wan Institute that's working with one of the universities in Philadelphia.
We're doing a lot in Minnesota as well at Northwestern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does a lot of research as well. I think research is really important too.
Northwestern actually attached themselves to some teams, right?
Right.
I mean, the school itself is attached themselves.
That was post me, but yes.
I think as far as answering Chad's question of where you want to see it, it says Sports Acupuncture Alliance, so it's creating that network. We have Whippo Reeves, like Matt said, there's so many people doing sports acupuncture, there's so many different styles. So it's about creating that network where we can pretty much all come together and start working towards that greater goal of getting sports acupuncture mainstream. Of course, it's going to be tough because, like I said, some people have the ego. and think they reinvented the wheel, but it's just creating that network, referring to each other, knowing, how to advance our training. We have Whitfield Reeves, we have Matt Collison, we have many programs and many things at our hands. And I think once we start utilizing that fully and start pretty much spreading it to each other and creating like a strong network in which we know, hey, we do sports acupuncture, we're professionals, we're doctors, so on and so forth, that we can get that broad scope and make this a true alliance that's solid in the field of sports medicine acupuncture or sports acupuncture.
I see that there's still other questions. I'm sorry, but our time is up. So I would encourage you to take the questions that you've all got and continue talking with each other through this evening, through the rest of the conference, on and on as we all connect, because having this alliance, having this group is really what moves this stuff forward.
Okay, that's it for this episode. I hope you found this discussion to be as helpful and interesting as I have. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.